Yuri Prohaska was so shook by the presence of Alex Pereira in their 2 championship encounters that he was under the assumption the man was using some kind of black magic.
Yes, everybody knows that, and he's doing these rituals before the fight. Everybody can feel that, what's around him and what's going on. My challenge to him, if we can fight in a clear way in these cases.
He said, he thinks he's doing voodoo, man. He thinks he's doing voodoo. Yuri is crazy, man.
The thing is, Yuri wasn't wrong. I mean, he was wrong about there being a shaman, but he's not wrong about the presence, the mystique of Pereira. There is something there that very few fighters have ever had, and I would argue that none have had in the unique combination that Poatan does. So what is it about this man? How has he garnered this aura around him in such a short career in the cage? What is that something he has that's left fans and fighters alike awestruck? I'm Tommy from MMA On Point. A massive thank you to our channel Hall of Famers for their continued support, and this is the real magic of Alex Pereira. What's up, guys? Just a quick one for me to say thank you to everyone watching. Thank you for engaging, commenting, and getting involved with the stories and videos we produce here at MMA On Point. Your support means a great deal to us here at the channel, and one way we can support you in return is with today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp makes it super easy to connect with a professional therapist who can help you work through whatever it is you might be facing. You can go to their site using our link, betterhelp.com/MMA-on-point, and they'll ask you a couple questions, and based on your answers, they'll match you up with one of 30,000 plus therapists who they think can help you out the most. The therapist they pick for you will have tons of experience dealing with whatever it is you're going through. Every single one of their therapists is licensed, has a master's or doctorate degree, and has spent over 3 years and 1,000 hours working with people just like you. But for some reason, if the match isn't quite right, you can easily switch to a new therapist with a click of a button in your settings. Join over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to connect with a professional therapist. Visit betterhelp.com/MMA-on-point or choose MMA On Point during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. All right, fight fans, thanks again for your support. Thanks for today's sponsor. Let's get back to the video. When trying to define what makes up the mystique of Poatan, there's not one single answer, but a collective of traits that together have created an allure and fascination that surrounds every aspect of his career. But the best place to start is the simplest place, and that is that he's a big, scary human being. He has a physical presence that is almost unsettling. When he's in fight mode, obviously he's shown that he can be quite a chill and fun-loving character. In fact, I think part of his appeal to fans is that he seems like he'd be a pretty cool dude to hang out with. Chama has taken over the sport, and despite his terrifying nature, Pereira is a beloved fan favorite now. It is impressive that he's been able to garner that kind of image, because without any context, if you saw Alex Pereira walking stone-faced towards you in a dark alley, you're turning around immediately and unlocking your phone just in case you need to call for help. Not to mention, he doesn't talk much. I've said this about fighters like Jose Aldo and Anderson Silva, but considering that a large portion of the UFC audience is from English-speaking countries, and even more so, with Portuguese only having about 35 million second-language speakers in the entire world, it's pretty safe to say that a good portion of the viewing audience will never know what Poatan is saying unless somebody translates it for them. And this has often worked to the detriment of Brazilian fighters, as it makes it a bit harder to connect. That has not been the case at all for Pereira. In fact, I think it's bolstered his popularity. He has mastered the art of nonverbal communication, and for the most part, his lack of chattiness just goes to reinforce his stoic nature. He is the man of stone, and he lays into that persona. He does not mince words. If he has something to say, it's important because he wouldn't say it otherwise. That we have to have his messages translated for us only works in favor of the mystique that he's created. It makes that layer of separation. It reminds me a lot of Fedor, as do many other aspects of Pereira's persona. With Emelianenko, he didn't say much, and when he did because of the language barrier, it made it feel like he was this otherworldly figure, like he wasn't even having normal conversations day to day. And of course, he and Alex do just like every other human being. But in the age where every fighter has 2 podcasts and puts every single thought in their brain on social media for us to scrutinize.
No, we recording, Jay? No, I'm joking. Hi.
The relative lack of communication we get from Alex only serves to heighten the sense that he's built different, so his quiet nature reinforces those blank expressions we often see from him. We know he's not putting on a show for when he's in the octagon only, that's just who he is. His stare-downs with Yuri are a great example of what makes Alex's presence so unique in the sport. Prohaska's energy in those moments are of someone who is determined and unafraid to face the challenge that is literally staring him down. But Pereira looks unfazed in a way that almost seems inhuman, like he's a Terminator that doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear and will not stop until you are dead. Like you couldn't possibly shake him because there's nothing to shake. Fighting is such a personal sport. Not only is it one-on-one competition, but there is a guarantee of physical violence being inflicted on you by your opponent, an aspect of mixed martial arts that clearly heightens the stakes and is part of the reason it's so hard for fighters to keep their emotions in check. All of this plays into what must make Pereira's unshakable demeanor a nightmare for his opponents. But Alex's story is uniquely suited to adding to his mystique. His directly indigenous background, something he celebrates and honors regularly at weigh-ins and on fight nights, serves as a tribute to his culture. It is undeniable that when Powhatan dons that red paint and traditional Padishah garb, that it is intimidating and does invoke his tribe's long history of survival and resistance to invaders of the indigenous lands in Brazil. When you pair that with his rise out of extreme poverty and beating alcoholism that started in his teens as a full-time worker in a tire shop, along with the fact that he's become a world champion kickboxer and is now one of the biggest stars in the UFC, it is impossible not to be in awe of how far he's come in his life. And like his indigenous background, it's hard to imagine, given everything that he's been through, that anything could rattle him. There are stoic people by nature that have lived comfortable lives, but Powhatan's stone face hits a lot different when you know that he's been through about 3 lifetimes worth of hardship before 40 years old and has come out on the other side. Of course, the other major part of his past that has played a pivotal part in his mystique was his bouts with Israel Adesanya in kickboxing, a story I cannot help but parallel almost perfectly to the impact Rampage Jackson made when he entered the UFC. Rampage made his debut in 2007, and US fans who had flocked to the sport in 2004 after The Ultimate Fighter had never seen Pride, or at the very least, Pride prior to Tough, and they were shocked to find out that this man had absolutely brutalized the biggest star in the UFC and its current light heavyweight champion Chuck Liddell back in Japan only a few years earlier. That win over Liddell gave Jackson this immediate boogeyman energy following the KO victory he scored in his debut, like he was the ghost of the Iceman's past, back to haunt him again, and he was, and he did. History really does have a funny way of repeating itself, because that same aura is what Powhatan brought into the promotion when he signed 14 years later, and just like Rampage, he was the dark past of the biggest star in the sport, back to destroy the empire that he'd built. Even if that wasn't actually the reasoning for him to get into MMA, and it wasn't, but the narrative was too strong. If you were not somebody who followed kickboxing, pretty much the only thing that you knew about Alex Pereira when he debuted was that he'd beat current middleweight champion Israel Adesanya twice, knocked him out cold, to the point where he needed oxygen. The night Alex debuted in late 2021, a performance that would see him win with a devastating flying knee, Israel was near his peak. He was coming off his 3rd straight title defense, he'd cleared out the division of its biggest threats, and besides the hiccup of his attempt at becoming a double champ, he was completely untouchable and unbeatable. He had it all. He was everything. He was the cover of the video game. He was the face of the UFC. The moment was perfect timing and added so much to the mystique of Pereira upon his debut, to the point that by the time he'd finished Sean Strickland in just his 3rd UFC bout, his 7th MMA fight period, his showdown with his former kickboxing rival was the hottest ticket in town. And amazingly, coming out of that rivalry on the losing end in their 2nd middleweight title fight and being finished far worse than Israel, the aura of Pereira only took a minor hit and would regain all the momentum it had and then some less than a year later, probably because Alex is one of the most active fighters on the roster. That loss didn't really have that much time to even sink in. The speed in which he achieved what he has, and his willingness to fight, has only further endeared him to fans. It took 7 UFC bouts to earn 2 different divisional titles in just 2 years' time. That's the fastest it's ever been done, and I really don't know how it could be done any quicker, to be honest. This year, he took on Jamal Hill to save the main event of UFC 300, earned a dominant victory, then turned around 2 months later to save International Fight Week in a rematch with Yuri that he won in spectacular fashion, despite coming into the bout with broken toes, which also happened to be the reason the card needed saving anyway, as the massive return of Conor McGregor was delayed because he had a broken toe. At his current pace, he's fighting 4 times to a year, and since late 2020 2022, he's pretty much been in nothing but major headlining title bouts, with the exception of his fight with former champion Blachowicz. He has dominated the main event scene and the biggest cards of the year. What he's been able to do just in 2024 has added massively to his mystique. If he really does get a chance to fight for the heavyweight title this year as well and succeeds, he's going to be one of the most legendary fighters the sport has ever had in just 3 years of being in the UFC. That is a pace to the Hall of Fame that doesn't even seem possible. But of course, it's not just about the frequency of his fighting. There are a lot of fighters willing to get into the cage at every opportunity. It's about what he does when he gets into the arena that has really solidified this mystique around Pereira. And it starts with his iconic entrance. One of the things the UFC has done by homogenizing walkouts is that beyond the significance of the fighter making their way to the cage and the song they choose, there's really little room for expression or to convey anything that's very different from the rest of the other fighters. One that is instantly recognizable and always sets the tone. Most fighters do not have that, or anything close to that. Poatan does. He has a walkout you can mimic, and people immediately know who it is you're impersonating. Not only that, but Pereira's walkout ritual has the unique connection to his indigenous heritage, which makes it feel like it has a lot more meaning beyond mere theatrics, which is just another layer of what makes it special and adds to the mystique of the walkout. Not to mention, for a guy who rarely shows any kind of emotion, the intensity of that battle cry when he lets off the arrow is unexpected, and despite his opponents now often attempting to mock it, has to be intimidating, especially considering what they know Alex brings to the table. The glue that makes all of the other aspects of his persona work. Terrifying power. But there is nothing in MMA that leaves people with their jaws on the floor like pure power. A devastating knockout is like witnessing a lightning strike up close. It's terrifying, fascinating, and awe-inspiring. But the sense that fans get when they watch him fight is that anything that lands clean beyond a jab might as well be the Grim Reaper tapping his opponent on the shoulder. There's not a single matchup that fans won't think if he can just land one good one, it's over. And carrying that into every single fight heightens the intensity of watching him compete and makes all the other aspects of who he is work so well. When you combine all of those elements together, you have one of the most unique and powerful mystiques this sport has ever seen, on the same level of an Anderson Silva or Fedor Emelianenko. Whether he's reached his ceiling or even higher heights are in his future is yet to be seen, but the aura around him and how people will look back on that aspect of who he is etched in stone, as are our channel Hall of Famers. Guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel. We cannot thank you enough. Fight fans, if you'd like to become a channel member, press the join button to get yourself started. You get a bunch of exclusive content, and you might have some input in our videos. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more video essays like this one. Leave a comment down below about what you think makes Alex's mystique what it is. And thank you so much for watching, you guys. I promise this is the only time I'll ever say this, but it seems fitting. Chama.